Yeah, so I did 25, a little over 25 years in the PA Guard. 20 of them were active. So towards the end of my active period, I started exploring, like going through that horrible transition feeling and that process of the unknown. And then I had a friend of mine, like a former mentor actually, who was working at Greencastle at the time, and he invited me down to a happy hour, and I came down, and the vibe and the people and just everything really clicked with me. And it was something that, like the project management, change management, that arena was something that I felt that I could be pretty successful in, because it's a lot of what you do in the military. So yeah, after that happy hour, I started the process. I reached out to Jeffrey and started the process of going to Skillbridge as part of my transition out of the military. Coming to an organization where everyone has gone through the same exact thing, especially with the transition process, it was very nice, because everywhere I turned there was a helping hand to, like, if I needed advice on anything, someone was there to help me, someone was there to guide me. So it made the transition that much easier. And then with, the Stronghold, going through the Stronghold program and starting to get those certifications, and then starting really to find the similarities between project management, change management, process improvement, to what we did in the military, and then getting those aha moments like, oh my God, I know this. Like, this is what I've done. This is the equivalent of this. This is the equivalent of that. That was super cool. And that initial bump into the Skillbridge program, the Stronghold program was instrumental in where I'm at now. During that transition, I was placed with a client, so I was working with a client, getting real-time feedback, real-time exposure with a client, and starting to kind of figure out and navigate the quote-unquote real world beyond the military. But it was nice because it got me acclimated. It got me acclimated to, once I did come on as an associate consultant, it got me acclimated to that environment. So it wasn't like I was just getting thrown to the wolves on day one. There was a nice progression and experience that came with the transition from Stronghold to Greencastle. The only thing that I wish that I could have done differently was started the process sooner, because it's that uncertainty. And even though I thought that I was doing everything correctly, and I thought that I was 10 steps ahead of everyone else when it came to what my retirement date was and everything like that, you slowly start to realize that you're not as ahead of the game that you think you are, because there's always alternate courses of action that can happen, and you're not really prepared for it. So this was, I wish I would have started this sooner, because this was really, it came out of nowhere. Like I had somewhat of a plan in the transition process, and then whenever my friend invited me down to that happy hour, it kind of like, wow, this is a different path that I can take, and it ended up being, the path that I chose, which is great, but I just wish that I would have started it sooner. So I think, like, my advice for people who are looking into the Skillbridge program, or looking into, or trying to find their way once they transition, is most certainly look at the Skillbridge program, because it doesn't necessarily mean that, just because you're in this program, that's what you're going to do, and that's what you're going to do when you grow up. But it definitely eases the transition process, because now you're not left with, the Skillbridge program, depending on what branch you're in and what service you're in, you can take up to 6 months. So that's 6 months of time while you're still in and getting paid, that's 6 months that you can figure out what you want to be when you grow up, as opposed to you take your terminal leave and then your retirement is there, you get your DD-214, and now you have no idea what you're doing. At least the Skillbridge program, even if it's not your cup of joe, at least you have that time and that experience to say, this isn't for me, maybe I want to go this route. You know what I mean? I said it before, like I call it the aha moment, like the moment that you realize, oh my God, I got this. And that was for me when I was a training NCO in the Guard. Correlation between being like a training NCO and project management is very similar. And when I realized that, like, we start using the terms like, you know, your scope, your sprints, your MVPs, your minimal viable product. Whenever we start looking at the project management stuff, and then I took a step back and I thought, wait a minute. As a training NCO, you get your UTP, your unit training plan, and the commander's intent, which is the scope. And then you're like, okay, well, that makes sense. Like, I did this for how many years? And then you break it down further. So your drill weekend is no different than an MVP. It's a minimal viable product. Like, that is the product of the scope that you're working towards for the UTP. And then you just keep on like finding these terms and you're like, oh my God, this is very similar to everything that I've been doing for however many years. So that was like the aha moment where I was like, oh, I think I have a pretty good understanding of this now.